Thank you so much, Jonathan. This is going to be huge because there's a lot on the line here, right? We're talking everyone wants a piece of the prize. And you know what that prize is? $2 million, do we? There's $2 million that everyone's trying to get a little piece of themselves. And by doing well in these tournaments, you get some of that, as well as travel awards, too.
Right. And I think one more important thing that these players are really playing for right now are the championship points that are so coveted throughout the season. Winner of this secures their invite into day 2 of the national championships. The loser of this will have to go on and play one more to secure that day 2. Moving on to day 2. So we see Jake and Blake both up there. Like they said, they're good friends. So hopefully, if one person wins, well, one person is going to win, right? they're probably going to be hoping that the whoever that they beat is going to be able to win their next one, so that they both can make it to day 2.
Yeah. All right, guys. It looks like we're going to get both teams on screen here, or at least one of the teams on screen here. Let's see who we get first. All right, both players getting ready. It looks like Blake really in his head already. He's already thinking of the first move he's going to make.
Yeah, and a lot of nerds are probably going through these players. Blake last year, he bubbled out of the top cut of World Championships. He actually ended up losing in the last round of Swiss to miss top cut.
Wow.
I know.
That's so tough being that close.
Right, and then you have Jake, who's had an amazing season this year. He was actually the undefeated at the St. Louis Regional Championships, and unfortunately he couldn't follow up that solid run with the championship because he ended up losing to the eventual champion, I believe.
Wow, so it looks like we're actually getting, I think this is Blake's team on screen here with the Charizard, as well as the Sylveon, Aegislash, and the 2 Genies. Looks like a pretty standard team, but we do see the Conkeldurr as well.
Yeah, and Conkeldurr is one of those Pokemon that hasn't been used too often, I believe, which I think that it should be used a bit more often because, it hits so hard, it has a lot of bulk, and, going back, Blake's team it's pretty standard. We see a lot of the Pokemon, and those are really common Pokemon. We see the Genies, Conkeldurr, Aegislash, all Pokemon that we've already actually seen today.
And it looks like we're going to go ahead and get the, I believe, Charizard Landorus lead there from Jake. And what is going on here? Oh my gosh, Jake and Blake both leading Charizard Landorus. And the crowd's feeling it, man.
And this is going to be an interesting turn 1 right here. We see the Intimidates come out from the Landorus to weaken each other's Landoruses. Charizard's going to be threatened by the Landorus. I think it's all really going to come down to what item they chose for their Landoruses, because Choice Scarf is popular, but we've also seen Choice Band, we've also seen Assault Vest. Most likely Charizard is going to be the Mega, most likely going to Mega Evolve and try to get as much damage as can onto the other side.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting turn where it's do I switch, do I protect?
Right. You don't really enjoy these mirror matches too much because there's a lot of It comes down to what you choose to do versus what your opponent's going to do. I mean, right now, it could go either way. Rock Slide could come out, or just Charizard hitting that Landorus really, really hard.
And we do see, of course, the Mega going down there. And I see your guys' tweets on screen. Don't forget, tweet at #PlayPokemon. Let us know what you think of these matches. How are you guys feeling about that mirror match right now? It's pretty awesome to see. And we get the sunlight there. And, of course, Blake as well going Mega. So this is going to be an interesting one. I'm actually excited to see this first turn here. And it's going to be a Rock Slide from Landorus. No Protect on Blake's Charizard. Oh, does a decent amount of damage. Only takes it down into the yellow, though. A critical hit, though, on the opposing Landorus. And we're going to get a Rock Slide as well. Will either of them hit hard enough to get rid of a Charizard here? I don't think so. Both in the yellow. Both lose. A critical hit on Landorus. What just happened? What is going on? I believe a Flamethrower into Landorus. Picks up the feint there. A huge feint for Jake, whose Charizard, and Blake's Charizard about to move. No! Picks up the flinch. What a crazy turn 1.
I don't think we could have seen that double crit coming at all. And, it's just unfortunate for Blake because the flinch that puts Blake down 1 Pokemon, most likely that Charizard could have either hit that Charizard or that Landorus for another knockout. So Blake right there kind of upset with that flinch, but with that Conkeldurr coming in, that might be able to provide some support right here. Conkeldurr with a Iron Fist boosted with Life Orb might be able to pick up that knockout on that Charizard. Of course, it also threatens that Landorus with a very powerful Ice Punch, but Blake does have to be careful here because that Landorus there is going to be moving faster than those Charizards, going to be able to go for another Rock Slide if it really wants to.
And you always have to remember Conkeldurr can be rocking that wide guard, which is so annoying. I mean, it's awesome, but every time I forget, I'm like, oh, he has that move. Great, I guess I'll just lose now. All right, we do see the switch out into Sylveon now. potentially protecting that. And nice. Sylveon's been in some competitions, huh? Charizard withdrawn for Blake here. And bringing in Aegislash, potentially a risky decision depending on what Charizard here decides to do. Overheat into what slot is the question. Oh, into the Aegislash, that prediction! Is it going to be enough? The Aegislash faints. Huge call, Jake. Bold move.
Yeah, that was definitely a bold move right there to go ahead for that overheat into the Charizard slot as we see Conkeldurr go for the Drain Punch here. Picks up knockout on Charizard.
Picking up the knockout. All right, so Blake not completely losing on that turn, but unfortunately just a rough switch right there.
Yeah, I mean, to overheat a Charizard slot that's already been heavily damaged, that was a gutsy call right there from Jake. Definitely paid off. Caught Blake by surprise with that switch, so I believe the next game, Blake's going to be a bit more careful about his switching.
Definitely, I would agree with you there. We get the Thunderous now in for Jake on the bottom screen, and for Blake, it's Charizard, the Mega, back out on the field.
Yeah, and I don't like Blake's position too much right now because, you know, with that Sylveon out in the field with that Pixelate Hyper Voice, it's going to be able to do a lot of damage to that Conkeldurr. You know, Conkeldurr doesn't have too much to hit it back because Sylveon's going to be resisting its Drain Punches or Ice Punches if it has Ice Punch, so it's going to be interesting to see if Blake can pull this off. He's behind right now.
Yeah, it can be pretty tough. We do see the switch into that Landorus for Jake. Going to get an Intimidate off here onto Conkeldurr, of course, reducing its attack by 1 stage and not really doing much to Charizard, which is typically a special attacker. Now we get the Thunderbolt into that Charizard slot. It's definitely going to pick up the feint there, being super effective. Oh, and a crit on top of it. How unfortunate. And Conkeldurr going Ice Punch, revealing that move there into the Thunderous slot, doing quite a bit of damage, 50%, but of course, getting that Citrus Berry for Thunderous, and he'll be getting 1/4 of his health back.
Yeah, and it looks like Jake right now is in position to finish this off. I mean, he does have that Sylveon in back, so it will be a lot easier to get it in. Right now, yeah, so we just see the forfeit of Landorus and Thunderous. You know, if it got knocked out, Sylveon would just come in and go for those Hyper Voices. So going back to what just happened, I mean, you know, the mirror match at first, you know, Blake just couldn't get it going because, you know, he Charizard flinched, right? That prevented it from being able to pick up a knockout. You know, and then Jake, that amazing overheat into that Charizard slot to get that switch, that Aegislash coming in and just getting knocked out right away. Aegislash is going to be one of the Pokemon that Blake's going to have to preserve because he needs a better counter to that Sylveon. You know, Aegislash can do that. It can resist the Hyper Voice, and it can come in with a very powerful Flash Cannon. Yeah,
there's definitely options there, and I definitely want to talk about that turn again. That was crazy. Like, how do you predict that? That's what happens at this level where we're talking the championships right here, where you make calls so crazy that you're overheating into Charizards. Like,
yeah, and Jake looks like he really wants to move on to day 2 right now, as it looks like both players are ready to get underway. Again, things that Blake has to do: preserve that Aegislash, not have Charizard flinch.
No flinching, that's the strategy. Dweehaw, ladies and gentlemen, with the pro strats. No flinching, no paralysis, none of that. All right, so we do get the lead from Blake. Oh my gosh. Let's see what we got. We got a Kangaskhan and Sylveon there for Jake, and Sylveon. I had to double check what was happening there because I saw the 2 Sylveons, and we get the Sylveon Thunderous for Blake on the top.
Yeah, and we see exactly what a difference in Jake's team is. It does have Kangaskhan, and Jake has piloted Kangaskhan to a lot of victories so far, so Kangaskhan is kind of like Jake's reliable Pokemon. We do see Kangaskhan going to be able to threaten that Sylveon because Sylveon is not too bulky on the physical side. Kangaskhan, of course, can go for a double edge onto that Sylveon slot and possibly pick up the knockout depending on the nature of the Sylveon and how the Sylveon's been trained with its base stats.
So we're going to see what Jake decides to do here. Of course, it looks like running a dual Mega team. Had the Charizard Y last time, but this time it's Kangaskhan. He's going with the fake out here. Who does he target? Thunderous. Doesn't want any of those prankster shenanigans. Of course, picks up the critical hit. Almost takes off 50% of the health there. Thunderous flinching from that fake out. A Hyper Voice from Blake's Sylveon doing quite a bit of damage to both of these Pokemon, but not enough to go into the yellow. And a Hyper Voice back. Will it be enough to pick up the feint on Thunderous here, doing a ton of damage? No! It hangs on in the red, gets the Citrus Berry. It's going to be around for one more turn. How frustrating for Jake on that one. Well, he did get he had a pretty good turn 1 last game.
Yeah, and Thunderous hanging around is going to be pretty important because now Thunderous can either go for a possible Swagger onto that Sylveon or a Thunder Wave onto that Kangaskhan. Not exactly sure what moveset Blake is running, but you know, the fact that you saw him, how happy he was to still have that Thunderous on the field, might mean that he has at least one more trick up Thunderous' sleeve before it's going to get knocked out. We do see a lot of damage done to that Sylveon, and it looks like the damage trade was in favor of Jake's side. Jake did a lot more damage to that Sylveon than Blake was able to do to Jake's Sylveon.
Exactly, and we do get a protect from Blake's Sylveon there, and a hidden power going into that Kangaskhan there, not doing too much damage. Double edge now. Oh, into the Sylveon slot, protected. Hyper Voice now should be able to pick up the feint on that Thundurus. We saw it do quite a bit of damage, and there it goes. It will go back to Blake.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people might be wondering why he went for that hidden power. Probably scared of a Landorus Therian switch in right there to possibly take a Thunderbolt. So Blake just trying to play it a bit safe, but right there it didn't pay off because, you know, Thunderbolt would have gotten more damage on that Kangaskhan for Blake's side.
Exactly, and we do see the switch into Landorus for Blake this turn, actually intimidating that Kangaskhan, reducing its attack by 1, but the Sylveons are both still out there.
Yeah, and you know, Landorus Therian, if it is going to be Choice Scarfed, can outspeed both Sylveon and Kangaskhan. Might be able to go for an Earthquake. Kangaskhan is in range to get knocked out right now from an Earthquake. Rock Slide might be cutting it a bit close, so it depends on what Blake decides to do here. And Jake's just going to go ahead and switch out that Kangaskhan for an Aegislash.
Yes, maybe predicting the Rock Slide here, switches in the Aegislash. Helping hand, though, going into the Landorus slot from Sylveon. Thanks. And Sylveon for Jake protecting here. I believe Aegislash should be able to take this damage from the Rock Slide, of course resisting Rock-type damage.
Yeah, and that was definitely a great switch right there from Jake. And, you know, Jake right now is just ahead of Blake a little bit. You know, he has the Pokemon count up, but he's also in really good position right now. If that Landorus is going to be locked into using Rock Slide because of it's carrying a choice item, that could be problematic for Blake, and that's going to force Blake to switch out. That's going to take more turns, more time away from Blake to be able to go on the offensive.
Exactly, and this is what kind of happens a lot of times. They said before the match, you know, they know each other's teams really well, so a lot of times you can make those kind of predictions and put yourself in a really good spot, you know, if you've played your friend so many times. We do see the switch into Charizard here, a Protect from Blake's Sylveon, and we're going to get a Wide Guard on Aegislash, which I don't think will matter since there was a switch and a Protect there. So another Hyper Voice. It will do a decent amount of damage to Charizard, even though it resists that Fairy typing, but picks up the critical hit.
And that's not something that you want to see if you're Blake. We do see Aegislash reveal Wide Guard, which means that Charizard's going to have to be a bit careful, and Sylveon also has to be careful too. Can't get all eager to go Hyper Voice and Heat Wave in this situation. So Blake right now, hopefully he has some single target moves out on his side to be able to pick up knockouts on that Aegislash. I mean, Charizards do carry Overheat. Could easily pick up the knockout on that Aegislash right here. But the question is, does he have anything to do with that Sylveon right now? You know, that Sylveon's going to be out in the field, going to go for more Hyper Voices. You know, it looks like Blake's Sylveon will not be able to take another Hyper Voice in that range that it's already at.
No, it is definitely getting pretty low, and it looks like our trainers have locked in their moves here. We get the Mega Evolve from Blake's Charizard Y, and of course it's going to set the sun here with that Drought ability. And it's going to make it really, really powerful if we can get a shot off here. And a Protect from Sylveon there, and Flamethrower from Charizard. Nice into that Aegislash, takes it down to 0. It's gonna faint. Oh my gosh, going back to Jake, that is a great call because that, like you said, with that Wide Guard, it could be pretty tough. And a Hyper Voice into the protecting Sylveon.
Yeah, and getting that Aegislash off the field is going to allow Sylveon to go ahead and go for more Hyper Voices right now because, you know, Wide Guard on Jake's side is gone. Good thing for Blake to note that Flamethrower in the sun will knock out an Aegislash at that range. Might come in handy if this goes to a Game 3 right now. And it looks like Blake does have the tools to be able to do this. So one thing to note after that Thundurus does come in is that Charizard got outsped last game by that Thundurus. So Blake now needs to find a way to knock out this Thundurus in order for him to have that Charizard be able to go ahead and attack in the sun boosted fire-type attacks.
And I want to remind everyone, there's a lot on the line right here. Both players, I believe, came into this matchup at 6-1. Is that correct?
Right.
So
Both are 6-1.
It is getting really close. Both of them need at least one more win to make it to day 2 of the national championship. So there's a lot on the line, and Jake has a 1-0 lead right now. So this is a big matchup for Blake right now, and this is a very big turn. This is the biggest turn maybe of the game for Blake here. We see the switch on Charizard and bring in Landorus, who will take a second to fire off a couple Intimidates there. Were all these Pokemon in competitions? That's what I want to know. And let's see what we get. Thundurus from Thunderbolt doesn't affect the Landorus, so great switch there. And a Hyper Voice from Sylveon doesn't do a ton of damage here. And I think that if Jake might be hitting back with a Hyper Voice of his own. Gets a little Citrus Berry, though, first on that Landorus. And here comes the Hyper Voice. It might be enough to pick up the feint on Sylveon. Let's take a look at that health bar. And no, Sylveon hangs in. And Landorus, of course, staying in the yellow.
Yeah, and right now, this is good position for Blake to be able to pick up the knockout on that Thunderous and that Sylveon. Most likely, this Thunderous is going to go ahead and try to pick up the knockout on the Sylveon, though.
And it looks like we're going helping hand here. I believe Landorus is going to outspeed, but a quick attack. Sylveon gets rid of the Sylveon of Blake. Wow, that move coverage, incredible. And here comes that helping hand Rock Slide. Should do a ton to both of these Pokemon here. Can Thundurus hang on? No, down to 0 HP for both of these, and I think Jake is down 2 Pokemon right there.
That was a really good call right there from Blake. One of the things about knowing what your opponent has, you know, Blake probably saw that quick attack coming 3 turns ago, probably. So good call right there from Blake to go for the helping hand instead of going just for a Rock Slide and a Hyper Voice. I believe that helping hand definitely put that amount of damage on that Thundurus to be enough to pick up the knockout. So good call right there from Blake.
Yeah, it gave it a little bit of usage right there because, you know, if you'd chosen any type of attacking move, it would have been over. So we see the Rock Slide from that very fast Landorus there. And down to 19 for Kangaskhan, as well as the Flamethrower there, picking up the feint, and we got a tie.
Yeah, it's going to go to Game 3 right here, and one player right now wants to take this Game 3 so badly just to be able to secure that Day 2, you know, invitation, I guess? No, not invitation. It's like moving on to Day 2.
Yes, moving on to Day 2, of course. Yeah, so quite a few competitors will go through. It's actually going to be really, really awesome, but that was a crazy matchup, and I can't wait to see the Game 3 here.
Yeah, and everything went in Blake's favor that turn, or not that turn, but that game.
Yes.
Because, you know, Blake kind of knew where Jake was going. He saw that quick attack coming. I mean, to go for that helping hand instead, to be able to pick up the knockout on Thundurus was huge in order for him to have that Charizard later on. And one thing to note, though, in that game, you know, so the order of turns is going to be Landorus, and then Thundurus, and then Charizard, and then Kangaskhan. So that's going to be important to note because now, you know that your Kangaskhan's going to be outsped by that Charizard. You know, probably Jake's going for a bulkier Kangaskhan, you know, not training too much in speed, worrying more about, you know, bulk and hitting hard. So, interesting thing to see Jake switch that Kangaskhan. Not sure if he's going to, you know, it's going to be a tough decision for him. Does he want to go back to Charizard or does he want to go back to Kangaskhan?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of options when you run the dual mega teams there, and that's what I love about coming to events like the national championships or just watching them. You see really interesting plays. Like I don't think I've seen a quick attack Sylveon at all really this year, and you're seeing like people like really start to develop their teams and get ready for even the World Championships, which is just a little bit down the line.
Yeah, and you know, coming into the season, a lot of Sylveons they carried choice specs, which is going to limit the moves that you can choose once it selects a move. And one of the things about, you know, the developing game is that a lot of Sylveons now are opting for Life Orb, which we see on Blake's side, or, you know, Pixie Plate, or any other, maybe a Citrus Bear or a Lumberry or anything like that. So we see exactly how good it is for a Sylveon to be able to change its moves, you know?
Yeah, no, it has, especially like with Helping Hand there too. We saw it on both sides. We saw the Helping Hand from Blake, and we saw the Quick Attack from Jake. So it's kind of interesting how diverse Sylveon has become.
Right.
It looks like we.
What?
It looks like we have yet another mirror match from Jake and Blake. This is out of control right now.
And you can tell that both of these players, you know, they're enjoying it. It looks like Blake's a little bit more frustrated because, you know, now it's going to come down to what's he going to do? What am I going to do? I know his set. He knows my set. What's going to happen here? I mean, we saw what happened in Game 1 with that mirror match. It didn't go well in Blake's favor, so Blake right now has to, you know, play this turn perfectly, really.
And I love the Twitter comment here. True friends choose the same Pokemon. No, that's awesome, man. And of course, we're getting some fans cheering for Blake. Guys, don't forget you can tweet at #PlayPokemon and join the conversation. You might see your tweets live on stream. But anyway, back to the intense match here. We got a mirror match. I don't even know what you do here. You just hope.
There's a lot of options. I mean, Landorus is probably going to go for Rock Slide right here because it's the only thing that can do.
That's Thundurus, all it can do.
Thundurus, you know, it can go for a hidden power or try to target down the other Thundurus as we see Landorus on Blake's side switch out for that Sylveon. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
You're exactly right, Dwayne. We're getting that Rock Slide. Here it goes. Going to do a decent amount of damage to Thundurus. Sylveon really tanking that. And we get a Thunderbolt doubling up into that slot. Great call there. Gets it into the yellow, but of course a Citrus Berry will bring it back up by about a fourth and very close to the green, actually managing to go above 50%. Hidden power into the Landorus slot, going to do quite a bit of damage. Is it going to be enough? No, hanging on with 6 hit points.
So you see there, you know, Blake getting out of that mirror match situation does not want to have what happened in Game 1 happen again, so decides to switch out for that Sylveon. Sylveon right now in pretty good position, can take an attack from his Landers, can also probably take another attack from that Thunders too, and go for a very powerful Hyper Voice. Landers Therian right now probably going to be locked into that Rock Slide, which didn't do that much damage to that Sylveon. Not going to be able to do too much damage to that Thunders, but a Rock Slide and a Thunderbolt will be able to pick up the knockout on Thunders, I believe.
Definitely, and we, of course, do see the Rock Slide. Sylveon avoiding the attack. It's going to hit the Thundurus here, though. Oh my gosh, down into the red. Hidden power now from Thundurus as well, doubling up into that slot. Is it going to be enough to get the feint? Yes, it is, of course, with that flying typing. Probably not really liking any ice-type hidden powers there. And we get a Hyper Voice from Sylveon. Will definitely pick up the feint on Landorus there and doing a ton of damage to Thundurus, taking it into the yellow.
Yeah, and that was definitely a good call right there. Really safe hidden power into that Thundurus slot, just in case Blake decided to switch that Thundurus out to take a Thunderbolt from that Landorus Therian and got off another Intimidate. So good call right there from Jake right there to be safe. You know, he still picks up the knockout.
You owe me a soda. All right, so we see the switch into Charizard here, and of course at the last second there, Thundurus did have a Citrus Berry on it, so it's back into the green. And Sylveon here as well for Jake.
Yeah, and Jake right now in good position. We know that that Thunderbolt's going to be going off before that Charizard. Like I said in my little speed tier little rant that I had a bit earlier, I'm not sure if that's going to be able to pick up enough damage to pick up the Charizard, because if that Charizard isn't outspeeding this bulky Thundurus, most likely that means that this Charizard is also bulky itself. So I think Blake is safe here to continue on attacking with that Charizard and that Sylveon. A Thunderbolt into that Sylveon and a Hyper Voice also will pick up knockout on Sylveon. So really it's up to Jake to see what he says is the bigger threat with whatever Pokemon he has left in the bag, either it be Charizard or Kangaskhan, or maybe not, he didn't even decide to bring in Mega this game.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dwee, that does look like it might be a relatively bulky Charizard there. We are seeing it go Mega here, and that's what's so great about Pokemon. You can train your Pokemon to kind of just be whatever you need for your team. So if you can surprise other trainers a lot of times, obviously no surprising your friends, right? But we get the Thunder Wave here from Thundurus, maybe trying to maybe either predicting a switch or hoping he won't be able to move this turn. Charizard, of course, Flamethrower in the sun, going to do a ton of damage here. Over 50% to Sylveon. Oh, the paralysis, he does get it off the Thunder Wave, and a Hyper Voice hitting back from Sylveon, going to do quite a bit. Sylveon down in the yellow. Charizard actually resisting that fairy type attack.
Yeah, and you know, you see how great Thunder Wave is. You know, a paralyzed Pokemon always has that chance to not be able to move. Blake right there was dangerously close to picking up a knockout on Sylveon and possibly picking up that knockout on that Thundurus as well. I mean, we saw how much damage it did last turn. So Blake's still in good position though. I mean, Charizard's still around, but you know, now with that residual chip damage from that Hyper Voice, Thundurus might be able to pick up a knockout here.
Here it is, a big Thunderbolt going into that Charizard slot. It's in the red, it stays in. Charizard using Flamethrower again, targeting down that Sylveon slot, and it's gone. Yeah, and it's gone. Sylveon back, of course, to Jake there, and a Hyper Voice. Blake through the paralysis, doing a ton of damage here to Thundurus. Oh my gosh, Jake is down to one Pokemon, I believe.
Yeah, and depending on what this Pokemon is, I mean, there's still a chance for Jake. I mean, depends on what this Pokemon is, right?
Very much so. Blake holding his head, afraid to see something, but he gets the Charizard and it gives himself like a victory fist there. I think he might be excited to see Charizard there.
Right, that Landorus Therian in the back definitely does not mind facing off against this Charizard. So even though Jake can pick up a double knockout here with a Heat Wave in the sun against this Charizard and this Sylveon, you know, Landorus Therian is going to be in back ready to go with a Rock Slide. So, I mean, there's always a chance of a Rock Slide miss. So Blake not out of the woods just yet.
And we do get the Mega, of course, here from Jake. And it's going to be a Flamethrower into the Charizard slot there. And let's see if Blake will be able to hit through this this paralysis one more time here. Hyper Voice, of course. Again, Charizard resisting it, but still doing a decent amount of damage, almost 50%. Sylveon losing a little bit of hit points there as well.
Yeah, and we see him go for the Flamethrower, so that probably means that he doesn't have Heat Wave, which would have come in handy so well that time. But, you know, there's always that chance of missing, which a lot of players don't like. We see Landorus come in now, so it's going to come down to whether or not this Rock Slide is going to hit. If it does connect, that should be it, and Blake will move on if it connects. And
there it is, the Rock Slide, no miss. Going to do a ton of damage to Charizard here, and I believe pick up the feint. Jake, after winning match number 1, Blake takes it 2 straight.
And, oh man, I mean, Blake must be ecstatic right now, but he must, at the same time, be kind of feeling for Jake right now, you know?